Mr. Gates, when you look at some of your initiatives, when you look at what you look at funding, how do we need to fund some of your important initiatives differently to get more people on board?
Well, it's been 20 years since two new organizations were created. One to buy vaccines for all the poor children in the world, the other to make sure that HIV and malaria medicines get out even to the toughest parts of Africa. Those two organizations have done phenomenally well. Our foundation has put over $10 billion into those efforts. Now, overall, it's $100 billion. Most of the money's come from the foreign aid budgets. And so, as you said, a lot of what we're saying here at Davos is let's look at that track record. Let's look at the constant learning that's taken place. And despite all these distractions, let's maintain that commitment because we can get even further. The replenishments for those two funds are coming up over the next year. The first one, Global Fund, is in October in France. And anytime somebody looks at this, particularly if they can go and see the work, they're enthused. So I think we will avoid the fact that it's far away, the fact that there's other things. We'll avoid this getting overlooked.
Okay, is there a worry that actually this gets overlooked? And how do you pitch to investors? If you have innovation, this is what can help the poor of the world. Innovation through medicine. What kind of advice, and it's better if you have returns, what kind of advice would you give to investors? How do they do good without losing money?
Well, in a lot of these cases, these are grants. You're not going to get a direct return. Now, the economic benefit, because you have kids surviving, participating in that economy, you have them be very healthy. The returns overall are fantastic. We had some people go in and look at it, and it was over a 20-to-1 return. But that's not coming back in the form of a dividend. It's that you're taking countries that are not stable, where lots of kids, up to 15% of the kids, die before the age of 5, and you're helping lift them up. So over time, like India or Indonesia or Vietnam, they graduate from being aid recipients, they participate in the world economy, and you get the stability that means that you're not going to have to go expend defense resource there. You're not going to have a pandemic there because their health system will catch that early and stop it before it spreads. With the right perspective, which is a long-term perspective, these are very impactful. In fact, of all the dollars the government spend, I'd say, you're not going to be saving lives for less than $1,000 per life, except in this area.
What new technology should we be looking at? So you focused on vaccines. You've also been focused on drones and other things.
Yeah, the drones, in a few places to get the delivery out, particularly when the roads are flooded, which you have in a lot of these countries. Rwanda, we've actually got that working. That's going well. The biggest thing would be some new vaccines. We don't have an HIV vaccine or a TB vaccine or a malaria vaccine. And so these organizations deliver what we have. Our foundation spends an equal amount, and the governments as well, trying to find the new tools. And because these delivery efforts have gone so well, they're building up the primary healthcare system. So it means very quickly, once we've got something, like we have new bed nets, those are going to get out there to even the toughest areas.
Okay, but how quickly can you get some of these vaccines?
Well, unfortunately, those are not here overnight. The new bed nets that avoid the resistance problem with the current bed nets, those are coming out this year and next year. So that's really soon. The miracle vaccine, which would help us end these diseases, those are more in the 6 to 10 year time frame. So it's proven to be hard to create an HIV vaccine. It's super important because we're still getting a lot of people infected, and to put that to an end, a vaccine is necessary.
Bill Gates, technology is making a lot of people lose their jobs. Who should be in charge of helping some of these displaced workers?
Well, different governments have different programs. I mean, technology, in a broad sense, meant that we don't all have to be subsistence farmers. And a lot of emergent needs, for middle income and rich countries emerge. So if you let economies be dynamic, some of those new capabilities will come in there. In the meantime, particularly if you're interrupting somebody's career where they've been trained in a certain way, some governments do better than others at reaching out, giving that worker a chance to move to where there's a job, giving them the new skills. Over time, the idea that we tax labor, we don't do much in the way of these training programs. As you have accelerating innovation, you'll tend to tax capital more and labor less. In fact, things like the earned income tax credit, you'll actually encourage labor in some cases. And so the overall picture is good, but to make sure there aren't too many losers, you need new innovative programs.
Is there a piece of advice that you would give some of these new tech companies? I mean, a lot of governments are asking them to be even broken up.
Well, yeah, I don't know if it'll come to that. The tech companies are so successful. In a way, this is the fruits of, being now at the mainstream of how shopping is done, how communication is done. And so, there's nothing that this will not pass. That is, as long as technology is so key, you're going to have to engage in issues about, what type of speech should be allowed or should not be allowed, or, how do tax structures work in a way that countries feel is fair to them. And then, privacy will be a very big issue. The companies, if they engage, there's not a contradiction between the services they offer and having privacy. That is, if you think about it, you can solve those. For example, face recognition is one where Microsoft is getting out in front and saying, hey, here's what we think those regulations ought to look like, not banning it, allowing it where it can be useful, finding lost kids. There's lots of positive applications. But this is one we're trying to not wait until there's problems and then solve them, but to really anticipate them up front.
If you look at your three worlds, so technology, philanthropy, and actually the world economy, what do you think chief executives get most wrong?
Well, innovation is what changes the rules. It's the thing that I'm most interested in, whether it's breakthrough software, breakthrough health tools, not only for infectious diseases, but all of our big health challengers, including Alzheimer's. And then in the energy space, we are not going to avoid big climate change problems without massive innovation in lots of parts of the physical economy. And so innovation is what changes the rules of the game. And a lot of CEOs get surprised they don't drive it enough inside their company. So that's my huge bias.